Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Really happy today to have Moyosore joining us today. So thank you so much for taking the time. I haven't seen you in quite a while, and perhaps what you could tell anyone that is watching, a little bit about yourself. And I know there's so many different things that we'll hopefully get to go through over the next 45 minutes or so. But first of all, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Moyosore Sadiq-Soneye. I wear multiple hats, so I'll start. I'm a dual qualified lawyer in Nigeria and Canada. I currently work with the federal government at the Immigration and Refugee Board. I have my law office where I practice mental health law. I recently wrote a book which is on Amazon for Black girls, and it's called Queens in Trainings, a collection of poems and affirmations. I have produced three Yoruba language movies. So they are indigenous movies that are available in my country back home. And I guess that's it in a nutshell. I'm also big on community service. So I have a page called Niger Lawyer in Canada, where I provide information or a soft landing for foreign trained lawyers who intend to get relicensed and practice law in Nigeria, in Canada.
Yeah, so that's amazing, and that's a very quick nutshell there. I know certainly we'll try to unpack a lot of that, and I think maybe that's the first place to start, right? Obviously, coming from Nigeria to Canada, maybe you can share a little bit of that journey, and then coming to school, right? I mean, for any of my Trios College students that are listening to this, right? That you were I feel it's like 2018, 2019, around that time, at the campus
Yes.
in Brampton. So maybe you could tell us a little bit of that about that path of your origins, in Canada here.
Yeah. I moved to Canada as a permanent resident in March 2018 through the Economic Route Express Entry Federal Skilled Worker Program. And once I landed, I worked in RBC briefly and decided instead of working, I would prefer to get more substantive knowledge about the legal system in Canada, Ontario specifically, since I know that I intended to get relicensed as a lawyer in Canada. So while I was doing my NCA exams, which is the exams that you would have to take if you're intending to get relicensed. And so, for instance, if you have a bachelor's or LLB from a Commonwealth country, you can get assessed on nca.legal, and they'll tell you the number of exams that you have to write. You write the exams, and then you have to go to the province that you want to get called and see what the other requirements are. So the NCA is at the federal level. And since I stayed in Ontario after I wrote my NCA exams, I moved to the federal level, which required writing the barristers and solicitors exams. And I did that. But let's go back a little. So while I was preparing for NCA, I figured that I didn't just want to prepare for an exam and pass the exam and then just be a lawyer. I really wanted to know and gain the knowledge. I wanted to know what the Ontario laws are, the rules are, and generally Canadian law. And so I opted to do the paralegal diploma, which is where I met JP at Trios College in Brampton. And I really, really benefited from that program. I enjoyed learning. Um, it really showed me that I was on the right path because I'm passionate about law, right? And when you have to rewrite exams as an adult, I had three children. I still have three children. At that point, it can be very stressful, but doing paralegal program and understanding the substantive aspects of the legal system in Canada made me realize that I'm still excited about this. I really want to know more about this. I think I'm on the right path, focusing on getting relicensed. So I did it concurrently. I was going to school in the day, going to school to learn the paralegal diploma. And at the same time, I was reading, getting ready for my NCA exams, subsequently the bar exams. Once I concluded with the paralegal program, which I finished with distinctions, by the way, once I concluded with that, I did the immigration consultant diploma. And so technically throughout the course of when I was writing my relicensing exams, I was also gaining knowledge and gaining diplomas in Ontario.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe you can share, because I often come across, students that are, again, internationally trained lawyers, and whether they're coming from Nigeria or, other countries, and they're thinking about what's the best way to kind of go through the NCAA process. I mean, I know certainly there's ways that you can take courses at law schools to help get you some of those knowledges or the equivalency. So maybe you could share a little bit about that process, and the benefit of doing a paralegal program at Trios, immigration consultant program, and how that helped you with the NCAA process. And then we could certainly go a little bit more into what that's like, and any guidance you can provide people that are making that same transition right now.
Yeah, so first thing I'll tell an internationally trained lawyer to do is research. Unlike in my time in 2018, there's so much resources out there now. There's a lot of guidance out there now compared to how it was in my time. I would say the first step you should take after researching is going to the NCA.legal website. There's a self-assessment tool there where it would ask a bunch of questions about your legal background and your legal education and kind of give you an assessment on whether, you can directly jump into writing the NCA exams. Once you do the self-assessment, you can create a profile, put in all your educational background, tell the school that you got your LLB to send the transcripts to the NCA, and you can also upload your CV and it's your resume. Make sure that the resume is detailed so that they have an idea of how much legal work experience you have, because that may tell on the number of exams you're going to write. So they're looking at your transcripts and they're also looking at your work experience to determine the exams you're going to write, whether you're going to write the minimum numbers or they're going to give you extra exams to write. And so that's just the federal portion. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're done with the federal portion, you still have to go to the provincial portion, depending on where you want to get called to bar. I got called to bar in Ontario, so the provincial portion was writing the bar exams, which is barristers and solicitors, and getting articling position. However, there's an exemption to articling, which if you have up to 10 months or 1 year of work experience as a lawyer in a Commonwealth country, you can apply for an exemption and explain to them why you qualify for that exemption, and also get someone who you worked with, or a judge or a magistrate from the country where you've practiced law to write a letter or a reference letter for you, and so they can consider that and decide to give you a full exemption or an abridged exemption to articling, or you can as well do the articling. So where my paralegal program and immigration diploma, where these two diplomas came to help me, was that because I gained so much knowledge about immigration and paralegal, we part of the paralegal program included going to like the landlord and tenant board tribunal. We visited a few tribunals, saw how the hearings go and work. Many of the courses entail you filling forms. Some of them have some clerical jobs, some of them have paralegal jobs. So there are a lot of things that you do that prepare you for real life. And it's not just the substantive knowledge, because there's a big difference between what you learn substantively and practice, right? So I also had an opportunity to work at a law office for my paralegal practicum. So I had an internship period where I worked at a law office where the lawyer practiced immigration law, family law, and mental health law. And that I can't even put a value to that. It was immensely helpful for me with my choice to get an exemption, and even my practice, because I was called to bar in Nigeria in 2012. So I do have a long work experience in legal field in Nigeria, but it's different. Even though it's the Commonwealth country, as same thing as Nigeria and Canada, it's still different. I mean, even within Canada, there are different laws between the provinces. So you can imagine. Um, the paralegal program really helped with getting that substantive knowledge. And as a matter of fact, there were some of the textbooks that I used during my paralegal program that were very helpful for me during my NCA exams. I found that there were more, there were simpler languages used. It was more detailed, and it really gave me an understanding of the core courses rather than just reading to pass an exam.
Now, for anyone who is coming over and going through that process, any other, I mean, maybe let's focus more just on the NCAA process, right? So I know you obviously had the benefit of, as we were just talking about, the practicums, the textbooks from a paralegal or immigration consultant program, and that's the path you took. But I mean, anything else in terms of maybe the actual NCAA exams, the process there that you can share? And I know you have tons of resources for people, like maybe you can summarize some of the important things for anyone they've had their credentials assessed and they said you have to do these courses and these exams, maybe even how many to do at a time that you found, or what's too many, what's too little, like how long should you expect, and then from there I guess we can go into the next thing is the bar exams and that process.
Yes, I omitted mentioning that there's also a pathway through writing them doing a master's program. So, for example, at York University, Osgood, um, people can do the Canadian, I don't remember what it's called. There's a master's program on the foundations of Canadian law where people can meet up with getting what the merits that they need for some of the NCA exams. Though you need to get the NCA assessment first, and you need to inform NCA before you start the program so that they can acknowledge and use the points you get from doing such a program to cover some of the exams. I know that most of my colleagues that did that still ended up doing one or two of the exams themselves. So I had 5 exams to write, and I originally opted for writing two per diet, two, one. And I think that works for me. I think it's a very subjective thing. It's not, I'm not going to stay here and say you must do this first, you must do that first. No, it's very subjective. What we all have as preferences differ. I decided to write professional responsibility first and criminal law. And that's because I've always been good with criminal law. It's something I really get easily. So I started with it. I have friends that did criminal law last. So, that's why I said it's subjective. On the NCA website, you can download sample questions, sample past questions, and deal with it and have an idea of, okay, this is the way the questions come. This is how they score it because they put how many marks each question has. You can also download the syllabus. So the programs you're going to write, you see the syllabus, you know what they're telling you to read. Um, I'm not going to shy about it, and I'm saying this because someone may need to hear it. I failed foundations of Canadian law when I wrote the NCA. I'm not someone that fails exams, so that hit me pretty hard. It was really, really emotional for me. But don't dwell on failing. If you're in a situation where you failed at anything, doesn't have to be the NCA exams, it could be anything. Don't just dwell in that. Try to pick up yourself, understand the reason that happened, and try to work on it. That's what I did. I wrote the exam the next diet, and I passed it, and I moved on. And I with my community service page, Niger Lawyer in Canada, I do get a lot of people reach out to me when they feel very gutted about failing an exam. And I understand, as in people that when we're in the legal field, we have this unconscious perfectionist behavior. We want to do things a certain way. We always want to pass. So when you don't pass, it's hard. So I'm just throwing that out there for anyone that needs to hear that failure is not bad. It's a stepping stone. You're just going to overcome it. Okay. And any other tips? So don't be like me. Well, I'm coming from Nigeria. Nigeria, we don't really have open book exams. It was foreign to me. I was like, what? What is open book exams? You had to learn. You had to know what you're going to write in the exams. So after many years of most of my life studying in Nigeria, coming to Canada, and they're telling me I'm going to have an open book exam. It was hard to get used to. And there's a trap of open book exam seeming easy. But because I wasn't used to the strategy, I would buy multiple materials, multiple textbooks, and that's the first way to fail an open book exam because you get plus you get like confused on the table, like which one should I pick, or where should I go to? But when you reduce the materials you're focusing on, you know exactly, you're used to the book, you're used to the titles, you're used to the pages, it's highlighted, you're familiar with that resource, so you can focus on it at the exam. I remember getting so many stare downs because I would go to the exam hall with like a hand luggage filled with books, and people would be like, what's going on? But that's because in Nigeria I didn't ever experience writing an exam that was open book. So it took a while to get used to that. By the time I was getting to my fourth and fifth exam, I'd cut down on the number of resources and books I was taking to the exam hall, and I'd become a pro with open book exams.
No, that's always very interesting. I find when people have to make that transition, I know for a lot of the paralegal students, their paralegal licensing exam is open book, and some of them are like, I don't need to. I'm just going to try to memorize because that's what I'm used to, right? Is like in my country or in my experience, or even in some of the paralegal colleges, they're doing closed book exams, and they don't know how to use this resource effectively, right? So,
Yes.
and one of the things and I'm happy you shared it because again, you talk about some people, nobody likes to share failures, right? Like, I mean, right now I know people are waiting for their licensing exam results. And suddenly on LinkedIn, whenever you'll know right away because I'll see screenshots and
Yes.
everyone's excited and elated. And if you're ever in a position, I mean, I don't know how, I mean, I would imagine it's similar when the NCAA results come out, that they come out all at the same kind of time, that
Mhm.
you get your friends are like happy they passed this exam, that exam,
Exactly.
and then your result is not that result, and it's very difficult, right? I mean, I've seen people just disappear. I've never heard from some students ever again,
Hmm.
and I feel terrible. I
Hmm.
want to reach out and say, it's
Yeah.
okay. Let's try to. No, it's not you fail. It's that it's not now, right? And then later, that
Yes.
your time will come. And so I don't know if, I mean, because you're sharing this, I think it's very important for anyone who may be coming across this, and it may not be a licensing exam. It may be,
Yeah.
they have a bad mark on an assignment. They
Hmm.
have a course that didn't go well in school, or again, it could be a barrister, solicitor, NCA exam, paralegal licensing exam. And especially when people are all writing it at the same time, uh, obviously you can go to the law study and see, well, hey, how come you're not on the portal, or
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah.
And so people kind of find out. So what can you share about that experience? And again, thanks for bringing it up because I think it's good to have someone that can share, hey, look what happened to me afterwards, which we're going to get to, and how I got through that sort of moment at that time.
What I would say is don't be shy to ask for help. I understand that most people are very independent and you feel like I've got this, or you feel embarrassed if you see that you've failed. There's really no need to. It's normal to be emotional because you worked hard for it and you just expect to not fail. So it's okay to have your downtime, but don't wallow in it. Don't stay in that downtime for too long. Try to see what the issues are. So with what I find with the Canadian exams I've written compared to many of the Nigerian exams that I've written, I don't really get feedback. Like, well, I wouldn't, I can't say because I haven't failed many exams, so I can't say if no, even for people that have failed, because I do have friends and I know people, but I don't see that many. I went to a public university in Nigeria and there wasn't any, oh, this is the assessment or the reason you failed. So this is the explanation as to why you failed. You didn't write this well or you didn't write that well. I didn't have anything like that. I didn't see that in the school I went to. But in Canada, when I filled the foundations, NCA is going to send you a document explaining what the score breakdown and why you didn't reach the pass mark. So that way you're able to work on that weakness. You know exactly where the weakness lies, whether it's in the structuring, maybe you're using the structuring from back home, or you need to change the way you're writing you're focusing on the non-important things, or they want to see certain things. I mean, so that guidance is there for you. And I know that there's something similar for the bar exams too. They send you a document if you fail, so telling you this was the pass mark, and you can speak with, and there's, I think there's also tutors you can speak with that's free. It's just someone that can guide you as to what you're doing wrong. And then you can, with the bar exams, because it's so many subjects in one, you see where the weakness was. You, because they give you the score compared to the average of everyone that took the exams at that time. So you kind of have an idea of, this is the, I need to work on family law, I need to work on criminal law, I need to work on public law. You have an idea of what exactly the issue is. And time management is something that I never really needed to bother about until I got to Canada when it comes to exam. Like, time management is huge. It's even more detrimental than even having the knowledge itself, because if you can't manage your time and you know the answers, you likely still fail because you didn't calculate how much time you have per question, and you weren't able to, like, you know, put all those in there. So there's definitely a lot to learn. I did a lot of reading. I read a lot of people's experiences. And because I didn't see um, as much as I would have loved to see, I created something called Niger Lawyer in Canada feature, where people that have gotten dual qualified, that have passed their NCAs and, you know, fulfilled all the things they needed to fulfill at the province level, and they've been called to bar their provinces, can tell us about what they struggled with during their relicensing process. They can tell us if they failed an exam. They can tell us tips or tricks that worked for them, because everybody's journey is different. So what caused me to get to fail, for instance, is going to be different for what caused the other person to fail. But when you have a variety of it, and you have someone you can go to and you can read different people's experiences, you're able to pick, okay, I need to be time conscious, I need to be careful about the articles in foundations, I need to be careful about this. So definitely, don't wallow in any in the negativity of what you think failure is. It's just, it's a net learning curve. When you fail it at that point, you wouldn't make that mistake, or the mistake you previously made again. So just see it as a learning curve and move on.
No, and thanks for sharing that. And then so after, obviously, you then continued on, picked yourself up, and continued with the exam and that exam and other exams. You completed the NCA process. So then what happens after that to become licensed, here in Ontario as a lawyer? So maybe you can kind of tell us the transition then from finishing all the NCAs and then the next steps.
Oh, so this one, COVID did this to me. I had seen so many people for their Law Society of Ontario call to bar. There's that long red carpet where they call you out and you walk and you celebrate. I got called during COVID. We had an administrative call. We didn't even get a phone call. You just know that, okay, this is the day I get to call to bar. You got called to bar. That was horrible. It was so anticlimactic for me, because I'd been looking forward to having that beautiful red carpet walk. But I was blessed and opportune to be amongst the few people that were picked in my set to congratulate my peers on getting called to bar. So on the Law Society of Ontario YouTube page, where you see the videos of of people congratulating their peers, I'm also there. So at least I have that. Then transitioning, I knew from the off the top of my head, while I was schooling and everything, that I wanted to be a sole practitioner. I needed the flexibility. Like I said, I have three amazing daughters, and I know that the exams took a lot of my time away from my family. And so it was going to be a deal breaker that I wouldn't be in control of my time. So I decided to be my own employer at first. And so I had my law office. I was practicing immigration law and mental health law before I got my job at the IRB. I've always been a government worker at heart. Even in Nigeria, I worked with the Lagos State Ministry of Justice. I worked with the Lagos Internal Revenue Services. Technically, I love public service. And so transitioning is it wasn't hard. I enjoy what I do. In each of the places I've worked, I've loved them. And even before getting called to bar, I tried to get some experience. I worked at the Brampton Courthouse. I worked at the London Courthouse. I worked as in the administrative sector of legal services because I always wanted to be around the legal services area, just so that I'm in tune with, law generally.
Yeah, so I mean, let's unpack a little there. So obviously, you go through, you get the online ceremony, which quite different. I mean, unfortunately, that's the product of that time. But then you eventually get the actual license, and you're saying, look, I want to have control of my time, and I'm going to start my practice. Now, a lot of both paralegals and lawyers, right, have to make that decision, right? I mean, perhaps part of it is for some, that nothing's materializing, for, an associate position as a lawyer or as a paralegal, junior paralegal. And so they make that leap into starting their own practice. Now, maybe you can tell us, what you've learned from that experience. And especially because, again, maybe are you're not so certain, right? You have that sort of imposter syndrome. Can I run my own practice in another country? I've been here only for 3 years, I think, at that point, right? Uh, how can I do this? And sort of what helped you through that period to getting established, and anything you can share for anyone else that may be considering that same step themselves.
Yeah. So saying that imposter syndrome, that's even part of the books I wrote for Black girls. Don't let any imposter syndrome pull you down because many of us have it. You're like, am I good enough? Can I get it done? Will I, sometimes we sabotage our success sometimes ourselves. So state of mind is very important. You need to get to the point of state of mind, whether that's your first choice, whether you would have preferred to be employed before opting for this or not. You need to get to the point where the state of mind is I'm going to be passionate about what I want to do. And if I'm going into the solo practice, I'm going to be very passionate about it because solo practice is not easy because you're wearing multiple hats. You're the lawyer, you're overseeing the financial aspect, you're overseeing the marketing, you're overseeing the social media, you're trying to check everyone is doing their jobs. You know, it's not that easy at the beginning, but it's definitely doable if you're determined and focused on getting it done. I had peers where we put our accountability peers, many of us who opted to go for sole practice, and around the same time we remind each other. We talk about the professional ethics to remind ourselves that it's different from where we're coming from. Remember this, let's look at this section. I don't really understand what it's saying. Can so we have groups of people, and aside the Nigeria lawyer in Canada, I also have a group that I partner with, Loretta, where it's called Foreign Trained Lawyers in Canada. And that platform has grown so well because we have pre-assessments. That's for people that have not even started their NCA assessment, down to the NCA assessment. So people that have started the NCA assessment and they're writing the exams. And then we have bar exam group for the provinces that have bar exams. We have prep group for the provinces that do pre-REP. We have articling group, then we have provincial groups, and then we have dual qualified for people that have successfully completed the journey and are now dual qualified. Some of them are triple qualified because they're also called in US too at the same time. And then we have groups for different different practices, areas of practice: immigration practice, real estate practice, family law practice, just so that we can have that community where we support one another, because it's unique to us that we got, most of us got to the country as adults, we relicensed as adults. We can only understand ourselves when it comes to the peculiarities that we go through in the legal space in Canada. And so yeah, I'll just say, just find yourself a tribe, find yourself a community that supports you.
Yeah, maybe you can share more. I mean, we've talked about, these different organizations and groups you've started, and the importance, again, as you said, find your tribe, find your people. Um, I was just in a talk. with a networking group, and one of the things, for entrepreneurs, it's very lonely as an entrepreneur, right? Because if you have your
Yes.
own business, you don't have that, and especially since the pandemic, right? Because you may not even have a physical, like a sort of
Office,
common
yeah.
space, right? Or
Yeah.
chambers, right? So you don't run into people. Even like again, pre-pandemic, I remember, when I would be going to court, you'd run into your friend and be like, "Let's go for some chicken wings by the Newmarket courthouse." That you
Hmm.
don't have that as much anymore. So what can you share about, obviously making those connections? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some more about the different things that you're working on. And what was that like starting and building some of them up, and the growth you're seeing in terms of followers, people in the community, and again, anything else you can share about that importance of joining and getting those resources, because again, it's no importance of paying it forward, right? Because
Yeah.
hopefully then those people will succeed and then share that information. I mean, the fact that you're coming here, right? I mean, 5 years ago, perhaps maybe we had somebody talking to our class, right? And now you're the person on the other end that's talking to that next group, and hopefully the people that are listening to this are going to, join and share what they've gained, a couple years down the road.
Yeah. So, aside from the groups that I created, I also learned a lot from. There's a networking group called Canadian Association of Nigerian Lawyers, and so I was like, this is amazing. I started going for their seminars. I started trying to network and speak to the older lawyers, and they gave me an opportunity to speak at one of their events where I said, please, we have a lot of new lawyers who are trying to get relicensed. Could you please open your doors for articling positions, internship positions, volunteering positions? And and it works because one thing you have to realize, whether you're introverted or not, the opportunities are not going to come and knock on your door all the time. Like you need to get out of your comfort space, try to network and try to find opportunities for yourself. And I always tell people, I know it sounds cliche, network, it's important. I know that when I wanted to study essay process, I sent so many people messages on LinkedIn, and I'll just get like two responses. But those two people replying me, it was invaluable. It was like gold for me because this person is replying me, and person has said, you know what, you can do it, go to this website, do this. And I really appreciate those people that responded, because what they have done has then opened the door for me to open Niger Lawyer in Canada and say, you know what, let me make this a public place. Let people come here. Let them see. These are the steps. So pinned on that page right there is the step by step of how to become licensed as a foreign trained lawyer in Canada. And it wasn't that easy for me. I had to research and research and research before getting all those details. And also there, you're seeing other people's experiences, you're learning from their mistakes so you don't have to make those mistakes yourself, right? And I feel like it's important. I also Canadian Association of Black Lawyers. I mean, um, um, you have to spread your wings. You have to be able to try to network. I know it's hard. It's harder for some people than it is for some. And even as a proprietor, where, like you said, I even run more of a virtual practice rather than a physical space. So I then make conscious effort that, okay, when there's a gala, when Canadian Association of Nigerian Lawyers are doing a gala, I'm going to be there. When there's a CPD, I'm going to be there just to make up for meeting each other at the courthouse or meeting each other down the hall at the office space, which I don't have because I'm running a virtual office, right? So I feel everybody just has to find a way to make things work for them. And Black Female Lawyers Network, that's another organization that's very important. All these networks, many of them are free for students. Many of them are free for licensing students. Many of them are free for paralegals. Like they've done their part to make it free for people. You just have to do your part to take advantage of it, right? Meet people, learn from their experiences, speak with people. And there's one thing that I learned from the first person who agreed to be a feature for Niger Lawyer in Canada, and he's a very successful lawyer, Charles Osuji, who owns Charles Osuji and Smith in Calgary. It's a huge law office in Alberta. He said, kind of dampening if for the first time you're speaking with somebody and you know that the sole purpose that that person is speaking with you is because they need something from you, like an internship or an articling position. And I totally can understand that. You need to be able to build relationships, right? Being in Canada just in 2018, the people I've met, the relationships I've built, it's almost as if we've met each other for we've been in each other's lives for life, you know. So you have to build relationships. And when you prove yourself, then you can start asking for favors like, oh, please, if you know anyone who has a volunteering gig, if you know anybody who has an articling position, I'm really interested. But that person knows what you can do and your capacity by that time, not that they are just meeting you for the first time and then you're jumping right into asking them that. So that's just what I'll say about that networking bit as a sole proprietor.
Yeah, it's like I remember I talked to Charles a couple of years ago on here, so what a fascinating story. And again, hopefully for anyone,
Yes.
we'll check that out to learn more about how he built it. I think I saw on my LinkedIn they recently grew I think an immigration division
Yes.
perhaps that they're
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
into.
They just opened that.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, the networking piece there and sort of getting that, being connected, having the tribe to help build you up. What else did you find? If anyone here starting or thinking about starting their own practice, maybe on, um, you know, maybe some of the requirements from the law society or uh some things that you wish you knew more about today, that you've had that experience. If you wish you knew back then, if you can go back and say, I wish I knew I should do this, would make things a lot easier, that you can share with anyone that again is either just starting their practice or planning to, so they can learn from your experience.
So for the exam part, it's that especially so COVID had a lot of negatives, but it also had some positives. And some of the positives include NCAB exams being virtual and not physical. And that's a big deal because what it means is that if that was the case before I relocated, I could have written the exams even before relocating. So I wouldn't have spent as much time getting licensed within the country. I would have started the journey before I landed in the country, right? So that's a big deal. So if you're someone that's fresh out of law school where your brain is still sharp from all the exams and reading, jump right into it if you have an intention to get called in Canada. And for sole practice, um, I can't really pinpoint anything, but I would say try to get as much experience as you can get. Like I said, I'm usually very good with criminal law on paper. It's usually kind of easy for me. But working in the courthouse as a court reporter in the criminal court, especially, made me realize that I do not want to practice criminal law. So you get as much experience as you can get. It's going to guide you towards achieving your exact goals, and it wouldn't be a trial and error thing. You can imagine having a criminal practice, starting and realizing at that point that I started the practice that I don't want to do criminal law. No, no, I learned this because I was working at the courthouse as a court reporter. That you know what, this is not for me. Even though I'm so good at it on paper, I would not want to do it. So that's going to be the small piece of advice I'll give in that regard.
Yeah, so in that regard, we obviously got into mental health, but maybe you can kind of tell us a bit about what your practice has been like in that area. What are the kinds of things you do? What drew you to that? Wait, you said why not criminal law, and I mean, that's even interesting too, right? I mean, a lot of people would say, why did you work as a court reporter or in the Brampton courts, the London courts? Doesn't that hold you from building your practice or your ideas? And I think that was a really great insight there, is that, well, you got to see this, right? I mean, I think sometimes people are solely focused on you know getting an associate position or something that they may pass up these opportunities to build. And yeah, so I mean, what got you into mental health law? What do you like about it? What are the kinds of things you do, and anything for anyone that might be interested in it that you can share about that practice area?
Yeah, I've been fascinated about the healthcare law sector since my master's degree. I did my master's in University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. I finished around 2013, and my dissertation was on the commodification of human organs. So you can see that I've kind of always been interested in health-related law. And so having the opportunity to get into health law again, health and administrative law, which is what mental health law is, was fascinating for me. I loved it. Another, and this would also come back to the paralegal program because my first exposure to it was during my internship for the paralegal program. So I'd read about it, but the first practical experience I had where I was following the lawyer to the hospital to see the clients, and I was jotting and doing my paralegal roles and legal assistant role duties. I realized I was in love with it. I appreciate I understand how it is working with vulnerable people. It's something that's really lacking in Nigeria. I'm hoping that someday maybe I'll be able to take all the information I know from, Canada and take it back home and help with the vulnerable sector. Um, it's been interesting. It's something you would always learn every day because um, each client is unique, right? Each client is unique. You have to be patient. You have to be calm. You have to it's a skill and not everybody has it. So I've had a couple of volunteers work for me. And, when I'm introducing them to the areas of law, I know that there are some that are not interested in mental health law at all. So they can't deal with it and they don't have the patience to deal with it. But it's like I said, it's a subjective thing. If something works for you, then it works for you. I'm hoping to delve into more aspects of the healthcare law, maybe surrogacy or things like that. I absolutely love healthcare. And so let's see how it goes.
And then, of course, I mean, the last piece there that we touched on a little bit, you got into, a role as a member on the immigration division of the Immigration Refugee Board. So what kind of brought that in? And I know obviously being a member, right, there's things you can and can't talk about, but maybe you could just tell us about,
Yeah.
why you were interested in that and how you got into that role and perhaps maybe you can compare, if you can, what that role is or was and I guess it'll be shortly again, you're returning back to it compared to practicing as an advocate. Like, we were talking about all the different hats you wear, uh, what it's like taking off the hat as the advocate and then putting on the hat as the adjudicator, and anything you can share. And
Yeah.
again, I preface to anyone listening, that obviously as a member, they're restricted obviously in what they can talk about in that role.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. So being a counsel and being on the other side and on the other hand as an immigration adjudicator, being the decision maker, it's interesting. So I guess that makes my life interesting, right? It's not monotonous. So I would say like I said, I've always been a public servant, a civil servant at art. Even in Nigeria, I worked with the government most of the time. So I feel like I have a duty to work for the government. It's just something, it's a weird feeling I always have. So I always look out for government job. And even with my jobs at the Brampton Courthouse and the London Courthouse, there were government jobs too, right? There were the administrative courthouse duties. I did the court registrar, I did the court and client representative, court reporter, court clerk. I did all those roles in the courthouses. So I've just always been attracted to having working for the government and working for the people. And as as an adjudicator, I feel like it's actually important that an immigrant like myself, knowing how what I don't know how do I put it. I feel like because of my experience as an immigrant, it definitely helps me in the job role too. Um, I've learned so much being doing that job. Um, I appreciate how the government is conscious about educating employees about diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. It's something that really fascinates me. As a matter of fact, when I read the resources that we're given as in training, I'm impressed as to how much research has been put into it and knowing that there's a constant reminder that unconscious bias is real and everyone is kind of guilty of unconscious bias at one point or another, and that's why it's unconscious. So you being very conscious or noting things like, okay, why was that reaction like that, or why am I feeling this way towards this person? Like, it would help you correct that. So working as an adjudicator is actually very fantastic. I love the job. And working as a lawyer too on my mental health clients is also fantastic. I'm able to manage both somehow and my community service and my writing books and my producing movies. I'm able to manage somehow. I'm very restless, like to dabble into so many things.
So how do you make all that work, right? And I think that's all. I mean, that in of itself, right? And then, I mean, each one of those, and and something, certainly, no 2 days are alike. And how do you kind of, I mean, any advice for anyone that has a bunch of different roles, or even one role where they're working a lot? I mean, you're talking about mental health, right? I mean, that's one of the significant factors, in the legal profession, right? Is that, there's burnout and addiction, and
Yes,
how do you
definitely.
kind of, from your own experience, sort of make everything work, and anything you can share, right, for anyone else that may be facing that sort of pressures and drive, right, via obviously taking care of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, you need to know yourself and know when you need a stop to stop. You need to know when you need to pause. So I joined a Facebook group called Lawyers on the Beach, and that group made me realize that I mean, the group is amazing. It may not many people are talking about this, what we're talking about, burnout and things like that, and realizing that you need to know when to stop. So I recently at the IRB, I took a 1 year leave. That is me taking care of my mental health too, right? I took a 1 year leave. I knew that I needed to step back and do other things. So it's very subjective, but you need to be conscious about it. Hopefully, I have an amazing family support, so I'm blessed in that regard. So if I can't recognize it for myself. I have my husband who's going to say, "Babe, you need to chill." I have loved ones around me who are going to be able to point things out. You're looking stressed. You need to take it easy. You need to take a leave. You need to take a vacation. You need to do this. You need to do that, you know. And so it's something that one is going to have to figure out for oneself. I went through a spiral in the past 25 days. I traveled to about 8 or 10 countries in the past 25 days. I needed that. So I have all this accumulated stress from the NCA exams, the bar exams, the getting licensed, starting the sole practice, working with governments. And I realized, you know what? I haven't taken a real break. I haven't rested. And I took it, worked towards it, but took it, right? So it's something that you have to be conscious about. Take care of yourself, have a spa date once in a while, uh, get massage, check your health, check your blood pressure, check your general well-being, because lawyers tend to forget to do those things. And if you can't pour from an empty jar.
Yeah, I feel like, you mentioned jar. I always think of the I don't know if I can find it. There's like that YouTube video where they ask you to put in the rocks, and then is it full, and then you can add in more and more things depending how you do it. But if you do it the opposite, then there's no room for those things, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
we tend to maybe prioritize, work more so than other things, and you have to kind of find that balance. And certainly, if you're doing that year after year after year, right? That it just builds and builds and builds on it. So
Built up.
again,
Yeah.
especially when I look at what we've covered, from coming to Canada and to where you're at today with all these different things, that each one of it on its own, is a huge accomplishment. And certainly, you've achieved tremendous success, number of awards. I mean, even things we probably haven't even talked about, right? That are a
Yes.
testament to, to the things that you've done. Since you've arrived here, right? And I think, kind of going back to that, right? I mean, people are coming to Canada. I mean, right now, obviously, especially with students, international students, there's all sorts of things. There's costs of living, housing. What
Yes.
can you kind of share about, that your journey, that can be kind of some words of inspiration perhaps for people that have come here. Maybe they've heard about these opportunities, and they've gotten at a time where there's a lot happening, right? And how to kind of move through that and continue on your journey, whether right now it's finishing a paralegal program or getting through the NCAs or writing the licensing exams or waiting for the results, which is the other piece, right? I mean, until then they come, you're not able to move on, or
Mhm.
starting a business or whatever. Anything you can share about sort of your journey there.
I would say, um, create manage your expectations, especially this crisis in Canada. It's not just Canada. It's not restricted to just Canada. I mean, I recently just came back from Nigeria. There's an economic crunch there too. It's kind of a global crunch, especially because nobody knew COVID was coming. And if even though we've moved from it, it still has the negative effect on the economy, you know. So what I would say is, if, like I said, if you failed, don't beat yourself up too bad about it. Just give yourself a reasonable expectation, learn from the mistakes you made, and get ready for the next diet and do it. If you're not able to get a job, I was there. There was a period that I almost knew the words that the email that unfortunately we have moved on with. I knew the words of that that unfortunately the email where they are not giving you the job. I knew it almost off the top of my head. But don't give up because you've gotten 10 refusals. No, don't give up. I got many, 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 many refusals. I would change the way my resume is written. I'll be like, what's going on? Why? I've got a master's degree from the UK. I've got over 10 years of experience from Nigeria. And I'm coming here and they're saying, unfortunately, unfortunately, unfortunately. No, don't worry about it. Just keep trying, keep pushing, and you will get there. You will get to a point where the teething period, this is just a tough period. You will get to the point where everything is going to be a lot easier than it is right now. So just don't give up.
Perfect. So thanks so much for taking the time and joining us today. I don't know if there's anything else you wish to add, or if maybe you conclude with any
I'm
final
good.
words of wisdom for the paralegal students or newly licensed or anyone else. I mean, I know you just gave some really great advice there, but anything else you can add? And thanks so much for taking the time, and thanks for everyone for listening today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll just say the sky is the starting point. You can do anything you set your mind to. It's mind over matter. So best of luck in everything.
Perfect. Thanks so much once again, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Take care.